Grand Theft Auto San Andreas was for a very long time my favorite game. It still might be, but I don't put too much stock in the whole favorite game thing anymore. I either like it or I don't. With that said, I played this game many times and enjoyed it every time, but every game has its ups and downs, especially the Grand Theft Auto games. So it is with great regret to my health that I've decided to rank every mission in this game. So this is every Grand Theft Auto San Andreas mission ranked from worst to best. All 101 of them. So what is my criteria for this? Well, basically, if you have to walk into a glowing circle, there's a mission name that pops up, and the content of that glowing circle is in any way consequential to the game or world, then it's counted. No side activities. I will take no exception to these rules, as you will see in a moment, well, except for the introductory mission, which doesn't have a glowing circle, but that's besides the point. The only other qualifier is that my ranking is based solely and entirely on the subjective amount of fun that I had with each mission. Keep that in mind, and unless the story is super integral to the mission, I will try to judge each mission based entirely on the gameplay. So let's get started.
Gentlemen, or shall I say partners?
So we're starting with an objective entry here, because the mission Fish in a Barrel in Las Venturas isn't actually a mission, it's just a cutscene where CJ and Ronfa Lee put pen to paper to become business partners and co-owners of the Four Dragons Casino with Woozie. It's a good cutscene, but it's a specifically marked mission where there's no mission. If the basis of these rankings is how fun the mission is, then how can you have fun with a mission that doesn't technically have gameplay? Surprisingly, this is not the only mission that's just a cutscene.
Hey, Carl.
How you doing, sis?
Truth be told, I could have ranked all these cutscene missions as a single entry, but there is one that stands above the rest, so I can't put them all under the same blanket. With that said, I'd say King in Exile is better than the last one because it moves the story along, whereas Fish in a Barrel doesn't really add much that couldn't have been implied or shown in another mission. King in Exile establishes that Los Santos has gone to hell and that Caesar's gang has been all but wiped out. It also serves to establish one of the side modes, but it's one of those side modes that I've never really felt any urge to engage with because it's just kind of not very good. Plus, it's a touching reunion between CJ and Kendall after all the hell that went down at the end of the Los Santos chapter, but otherwise, yeah, just a cutscene.
Same things make us laugh, make us cry.
Yes, I know that there's going to be a lot of memesters who get mad at me for placing the iconic Big Smoke cutscene at the bottom, and quite frankly, the iconic status of the mission is the only reason it places above the previous entries. CJ having an existential moment after walking into his childhood home before—
You picked the wrong house, fool!
Hey, Big Smoke! It's me, Carl! Chill!
CJ.
But once again, there's no actual gameplay to this mission, so I can't rank it anywhere but the bottom. Once again, though, the cutscene itself is pretty cool.
That's the security card reader that Zero sent over. Now all we need to do is get one of those cards.
Alright, so I've heard it said before that hate is not the opposite of love, apathy is the opposite of love, but I also consider apathy the opposite of hate. Imagine you have a line that on one end is labeled love and on the other end is labeled hate. Apathy is in the dead center where no emotion shall escape. And that is where the mission Key to Her Heart exists. Essentially, what I thought to be the worst mission would have to be something that was really long, really tedious, and with very little action. And Key to Her Heart fits that description perfectly. It's a mission where you spend way too long trailing a kinky croupier closely but not too closely in order to eventually seduce her so you can get a key card for a later heist. A heist that will come up quite a lot on this list. So this is a mission that is 95% this unbearably slow tailing mission, and the other 5% is completely unmentionable, but as far as miles per gallon, this is easily the most boring, overlong, and tedious mission in the game, bar none. If I never have to play this mission again, it would be too soon.
Yeah, there's some reporter who's digging up dirt on Pulaski. We don't know who's talking, but we know the reporter's meeting him today.
Did somebody say tedious tailing mission? Well, step right up snail trail. You have to tail a reporter who's looking to run an expose on Officer Tenpenny. Okay, well in this case it's Pulaski, but that's just splitting hairs. And for those of you who don't know, which is probably like 3 of you, Tenpenny is the main antagonist who has CJ at his beck and call due to Tenpenny framing CJ for murder. As for the reporter, you have to take him out along with his journalist accomplice. To do this, you have to follow him across The entire state. And then tail him as he drives to Santa Maria, all while making sure not to get too close, because if you get too close, you have to do it all over again with no checkpoints. This takes forever, and I mean forever. It's a several-minute trip between San Fierro and Los Santos alone. Then it's like they're purposely going as slow as possible thereafter, like they're trying to bore any potential pursuers to sleep. At least shooting the reporter and the journalist is an entertaining finish, but that doesn't make up for the extremely long and tedious process of tracking down the reporter to his destination, or the drive back. Christ, this mission sucks. Hi, my name is Braxton Hammersmith. Actually, it's not. But if it was, you can be sure that practically every website I visit would be tracking that info as well as all my other personal info for nefarious reasons. But I'm able to surf the web worry-free, and that's all thanks to the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN. NordVPN is the world's biggest virtual private network. It encrypts your web browsing, shielding you from illicit data miners and cyber attacks, so you can browse worry-free knowing that some big corporation or 2-bit hacker doesn't know that you looked up that really weird thing that one time. You know the one. Plus, NordVPN can do more than that, as it can virtually project your online fingerprint into entirely different regions of the world. That way you can do things like watch a streaming service catalog from an entirely different country. This was useful for me when the Twisted Metal TV show didn't come out in my country until a couple of weeks after it came out in the States. In addition to that, NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world with over 5,000 servers in 60 different countries. And if you sign up today with the link nordvpn.com/tacticalbacon, that's nordvpn.com/tacticalbacon, and sign up for a 2-year plan, you'll get 4 extra months free. And with their 30-day money-back guarantee, you can try it with no commitments. So what are you waiting for? Sign up today and get protected. And once again, thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring today's video.
Stone me bloody crows. Oh, where am I?
Don Peyote is a mission that is unfortunately pretty uneventful for as critical as it is to the game's overall plot. The truth, this hippie guy with the 1,000-yard stare needs you to pick up a couple of his friends on a desert plateau after a bad peyote pilgrimage. God, I hope that didn't pop the mic. These 2 friends are Kent Paul and Makar. Kent, of course, being a character from Vice City. This gives CJ an in with Caligula's casino because these 2 are associated with Ken Rosenberg, who is a neutral party between 3 mafia families who is running the casino, which just so happens to be the casino that's giving Woozy a hard time with his casino, and therefore CJ wants to pull a heist on them. You got all that? So basically, this mission is pivotal towards one of the main subplots in the game. However, the actual mission is just a long drive into the desert, and then back to the city with a somewhat humorous stop along the way at the snake farm. And if you went all the way to the top of the plateau without a 4-door car, sucks to be you. Go back and find one. So basically, this mission is just plain boring, which is a damn shame.
Hey, my cousin just called me. He gave me a tip about a baller's car going to San Fierro to score yay.
It's funny how many of these bottom-of-the-list entries consist of just driving to a place, then not doing much else. Photo Opportunity is a setup mission where you have to track down a bunch of high-rolling gang members to a deal they're making and take pictures of them to see who has their fingers in the pie. A group operating as the Loco Syndicate, giving you targets to take out for the next chunk of missions. Simple enough. Yeah, that's the problem though. You just drive to a place, take a couple of pictures, and that's it. No action whatsoever. And it doesn't help that you drive halfway across the state. Couldn't the mission have just started in Angel Pine instead of San Fierro? You know, so you can at least start where the hypothetical action is? And the worst part is, this is one of those missions where you have to drive Caesar's car, and if it gets totaled along the way, you have to start the mission over again, and that means driving all the way back up to San Fierro to start the mission again. You know how frustrating it is to get 80% of the way there only to hit a bump or get sideswiped and then flip over, then have to drive the entire distance again? Yeah, it sucks. Just like the mission.
Oh, that's a great idea, sis. Won't you shut up?
Wear Flowers in Your Hair is the introductory mission of San Fierro, and it's not good at all. It does make you explore San Fierro, which is nice, but it's a monumentally dull mission where you have to meet multiple acquaintances of the truth and then bring them back to your garage. And also there's a couple of pit stops where the truth is scoping out mysterious government vehicles, which would be tolerable if that plot point went anywhere and wasn't just a pit stop in a mission that's already tedious, but it doesn't go anywhere, so it's utterly pointless. Basically, you have to drive to like 5 separate locations around the city and then back to your garage with no meaningful action in the meantime. It's a dull-ass mission. And it's also one of those missions where if you wreck your car you have to start again, which you probably won't, as it's a fairly leisurely mission and there's no urgency, but it still doesn't help the overall mission and its plodding pace. This is one I wish I could skip. At least it's all in a single city, which puts it above its cross-country contemporaries.
So listen, now, you're gonna have to learn how to fly.
No, I ain't.
Yes, actually you are.
So fun fact, there are 4 different schools in this game for you to learn various vehicle mechanics and upgrade your stats. However, only 2 of them count as actual missions, and the driving school is entirely optional, which is why it places above learning to fly. You have to go through flying school in order to continue the plot. And it's an agonizing 20 minutes of learning flight mechanics that you probably already know how to do that doesn't even advance the plot in itself. So basically, it's an entirely pointless bit of chaff that I would love to be able to skip, but it's a painful obligation on the road to the end of the game. The only reason it doesn't place at the bottom? Well, at least flying is more interesting than driving, and that lesson where you blow up the cars is fun.
I was just telling these cats what's important. We gotta let everybody know Grover's back on the map.
Not gonna lie, outside of the missions where the mechanic is introduced or reintroduced, I don't like having to do the Gang Wars minigame as a mission. That minigame where you take over territory by surviving 3 waves of attack by defending gang members, and Grove for Life is like 3 missions from the end of the game, so it's not exactly a great way to escalate things to the climax. This mission entails you going to Idlewood and taking over 2 Bala's territories. It's honestly the most pointless mission in the game. I feel like you could have established Grove Street's dominance from a story context in a million more interesting ways than this. Considering we have to do the territory takeover thing in order to unlock the final mission anyway, making you do it within a mission feels completely pointless. The only interesting aspect of this mission is the fact that Sweet is here alongside you. Unfortunately, that also means that he's a liability. As easy as this mission can be, Sweet stepped in front of a car at one point and bada bing bada boom, I had to redo the mission. And as easy as the Gang Wars minigame can be and usually is, it can also be a bit arduous to activate at times because you need to wait for 3 gang members to spawn in, and sometimes that can take a while because it's just about luck, so this mission ends up feeling way longer than it needs to be. So all in all, Grove for Life is definitely one of the few missions in the entire game that I can honestly say didn't need to exist.
Street cats don't call no cops.
Carl, he's a DA.
Oh, yeah? Well, where I go find him?
You know, 555 Wee Tip is a mission that I managed to complete in this playthrough on the first try, but traditionally for me it's one of the hardest missions in the game. It starts out simply enough. You need to steal a valet uniform, then steal a targeted DA's car, plant some drugs and get it back, all within a slim time limit in order to call the Wee Tip hotline. But the time limit isn't the issue, it's the fact that you can't damage the car even slightly. If you do, you have to go back to get the car fixed, and you only have time to go back and get it fixed maybe once if you're lucky. But I'm not sure if you noticed, but this is a game where people will merge lanes very suddenly, zoom out of intersections to T-bone you, and overall just act like a bunch of crazy drivers worthy of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It's just obnoxious, and what's more obnoxious is when you're a valet and having to wait for the DA's car. Just standing there waiting for the right car kills the pace. At least the ending is funny though.
You find anything back there?
Found anything? He's got half of Mexico in here.
OG Loke in the place. You don't want to stop me with a gun in your face. Yeah, man.
Life's a Beach is a famously terrible mission, and for damn good reason. You have to steal a DJ's sound van for OG Loke, the idiot wannabe gangster rapper. But you can't just go up to it and steal it like any other car. Oh no, you need to first gain access to the van by playing a rhythm game and get at least 3,500 points in order to impress the DJ. Then you need to get away with the van while being chased. The only reason it's not at the bottom of the list for me is because, as obnoxious as it is, it's still only a couple of minutes, as the song you have to do the rhythm game for isn't super long, but still longer than it needed to be. So compare this to the other entries at the bottom of the list, and this is downright fast-paced, but still, this is a lot more obnoxious and slow than it needed to be.
He saw one of the containers was loading up cars, and one was a match for a car on a customer's wish list.
Speaking of slow missions, Customs Fast Track is so slow. It's a mission where you have to go down to the San Fierro dockyards, then pick up 3 separate containers and drop them all until you find the car you're looking for. I think it's one of those things that's programmed to where it's always the 3rd container, but I could be wrong. Driving the crane is such a chore. It's big, slow, and unwieldy, and one mistake will destroy the container and force you to restart the mission. Eventually, security comes to try and stop you, but by that point, it's too little too late. The slow as hell pace that the mission had up to that point completely kills any goodwill I have for Customs Fast Track. Plus, it also introduces the imports and exports side mission where you have to find cars and bring them to the dockyard. I actually completed this back in the day, but I don't know how. It's the lamest excuse for gameplay in the entire game.
Now listen, I need you to buy me some property, okay? Shouldn't cost that much. You offer them $1. If they give you a hard time, kill them.
You may be wondering why Verdant Meadows didn't place as low as the other cutscene missions. Well, mostly because technically the mission in question isn't just a cutscene. After the cutscene, the objective is to go to the desert and purchase the abandoned airstrip in order to progress the story. It's not much, but it's something. I guess there's really not much else to say about Verdant Meadows. It's a vapid nothing burger of a mission, but at least a nothing burger is better than some of the other entries on this list.
You're gonna have to deal with Beat Up.
What? Beat up?
You want to know why Beatdown on Beat Up places so low? Because it's almost a direct copy-paste of the mission Doberman, where you have to take over Glen Park. The mission Doberman served to introduce both Ammunition and the Gang Wars minigame, so it had a purpose. Aside from being a copy-paste, this doesn't even reintroduce the Gang Wars mechanic at the opposite end of the game, as that was introduced in the previous mission Homecoming. The only thing that Beatdown on Beat Up adds to Doberman is the fact that Sweet's here when he wasn't there in Doberman, but it adds almost nothing. So this is up there with Grove for Life as far as missions that don't need to exist, and the abundance of Gang Wars minigames in place of actual structured missions at the end of the game is really disappointing. But at least Beatdown on Beat Up has some story context, which is why it places slightly higher than G4L.
Passing a test will unlock the next test in the training program.
Like I said before, the back to school mission where you have to go through driving school is entirely optional. However, it's still monumentally boring and takes way too long for relatively little payoff. Like, it gives you more driving skill and a couple of special cars depending on how well your average grade is. Whoop-de-doo. It's still very much 15 to 30 minutes you can easily survive without doing because most of the lessons are fairly self-explanatory and incredibly obnoxious to get good grades in, especially the final one where you have to drive across the town and back all zippy-like while taking as little damage as possible. No thank you, give it a miss.
Yeah, okay. I guess we cool. For now.
Cesar Villalpando.
Carl Johnson. CJ.
This mission, Cesar Villalpando, is basically the same thing as Life's a Beach, only shorter and involving lowriders, so it has that going for it. Basically, you go to a lowrider meet and try to impress your sister's boyfriend's gang for reasons that are entirely self-explanatory. Plus, if you have the money, you can freely customize your lowrider for the first time, and let me just say, they went all out for this. Elsewise, yeah, this is only a slightly less boring version of Life's a Beach, and what gets me is that for this mission, at least for me, the up and down controls were opposite to the on-screen commands, so this mission is a bit of a chore. But it's also where they introduce Caesar, and that's pretty cool, because Caesar is a G.
I need to go check on things in the hood. Man, that's the problem. You always a perpetrator, running from what's real.
Can I be entirely honest? I really don't like Sweet. Like, at all. CJ spends a crap ton of time building up his assets outside of the Grove Street, and after CJ moves heaven and earth to get Sweet out of jail, all Sweet can think about is running back to the Grove. Like, talk about throwing it back in your face. Dude's offering you the world, and all Sweet wants to do is wallow in his childhood neighborhood. Sweet can't even begin to grasp the amount of work that CJ had to put in to make something out of his life while Sweet was in the clink. So anyways, you have to pick up Sweet from prison, then drive him down to Grove Street to take it back from the deadbeats and the addicts. These are crazy times. The bulk of the mission is just a standard gang wars minigame where you have to take out some of the dealers. The context of this mission pisses me off, and I give this mission some leeway as it's the reintroduction of this mechanic, though still, as it pertains to a story mission, it's not exactly A-level material. Perfectly serviceable, but not great. And the story context is so irritating that I'm genuinely docking significant points for it. I was trying not to do that, and I probably won't after this because who said I need to be consistent? If this list is all about the subjective amount of fun I'm having, I didn't have much fun with this mission because I was so pissed off at Sweet.
Hey man, what you strapped for?
Man, some pizza place keeps paying over our hit up, man.
Of all the missions in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, the one simply called Ryder is probably the most forgettable. As in, even though it's literally like the 5th mission in the game, I saw the title of the mission on a list and could not place what exactly you do in it. Well, this is the mission where they tutorialize character customization insofar as you're supposed to get a haircut, and it also tutorializes going to get food when you're hungry. Pretty simple. So simple in fact that I had to look it up to even remember what it was. So yeah, definitely the quintessential early game mission in that not much happens. It's fairly low stakes and just teaches you some things that you probably could intuit by yourself. Although hey, Ryder tries to stick up the pizza parlor, and if you kill the guy you can get a pretty good shotgun very early into the game, so that's nice.
We gotta go hit up the hood.
Hey, CJ.
Let them know you back on the set. The Johnson brothers is rolling again.
Main missions that introduce side missions are a tried and true fixture of the genre of sandboxes, but each one of these are only as interesting as the thing it's introducing. San Andreas has a number of missions that introduce side content, Ryder was boring, and tagging up turf is also boring. You drive around using a can of spray paint to tag up some enemy gang's graffiti. It's as dull as it sounds. They let you use spray paint as an offensive item at one point, but I don't know why, considering it's completely obsolete to combat the moment you get a gun, which there's no reason you can't already have by this point. So this mission is lame, but with that said, it does have a unique element of giving you an unlimited ammo spray paint can just for this mission. So if you have the patience, you can tag up the entire city during this mission and never worry about it running out.
You such a good gunman, homie. You gotta ride shotgun. Show CJ what's cracking.
For the record, Drive-By is not the mission you probably think it is. That was 2 missions before this and was called Drive-Through. Drive-By is probably the lesser of the 2 missions because all you're supposed to do is find some groups of ballas hanging around and take them out. Although you yourself are not supposed to take them out because by this point you're not supposed to have any weapons that you can shoot out the side of your car with. You're supposed to sit back and let the rest of the crew handle it. Although by this point I did have a weapon I could shoot out the side of my car with, so I did participate. But in theory, this is a mission that basically plays itself, and in that respect it's one of the most boring missions in the game. Not terrible or frustrating, just kinda boring. Although it is kind of frustrating how every time I leave my car to go pick up some of the guns left behind, somebody yells at me for doing so.
Carl, don't run out on me again.
Guys, I'm just getting free ammo, calm down.
Congratulations on your award, you must be thrilled.
Yeah. I like to thank my fans, my mama, and my dealer.
Man, it's funny how the mission management issues manages to be simultaneously short, but also feel way too long. And that's because it's slower than an inappropriate simile that I will not say. You have to pose as a chauffeur in order to get the manager of the rapper Mad Dog into your car so you can drive him into the water, thereby getting him out of the way for your friend OG Loke. Admittedly, once he's in the car and you're driving to the Santa Maria Pier with cars in hot pursuit, it's actually a halfway thrilling mission, but it takes way too long to get there. Up until that point, it's just jacking a car that you can't damage and then drive really slowly in formation until you get to the theater. So this is a mission that starts weak, but at least ends kinda strong.
What are you doing, son? Just give her the cash.
Suit yourself, maricon.
Tanker Commander is one of the 4 heists you can pull with Catalina while you're exiled to the countryside following the big first act twist, and to be honest, Tanker Commander is easily the worst one. You basically just steal a tanker of petroleum and take it to a place you can sell it, all the while people who are working at the gas station try to take it back from you. It's honestly smart to blow up the car that's pursuing you and then proceed as needed. This can backfire, but once you get the car properly destroyed without destroying yourself, it's just a slow drive to the depot, which isn't a long drive, but definitely isn't short either. Plus, it's also really slow because of the car you're driving. Definitely not something I relish doing during my return playthroughs.
Well, what you gonna do if the ballers roll through? Throw shoes at them? Say, what happened to Emmett?
9s and AKs is a mission where they tutorialized the shooting aspect of the game. Unfortunately, it's introduced a bit late. Even though it's only like 7 missions into the game, by that point I already have myself a pistol, an Uzi, and a shotgun. So teaching me how to shoot at that point is a bit redundant, but to be fair, that is the experienced player speaking, and if this were somebody's first time through, it might help them. But even with that taken into account, shooting stationary targets is not the most interesting way to learn these mechanics. So even giving 9s and AKs all the leeway possible, it's still not a very interesting mission.
Okay, look. I'ma go shut off the city's power source. Wools, look after these fools for me.
Dam and Blast is one of those missions where it's somewhat stealth-based, but where it doesn't really matter much. This is another setup mission for the big Caligula heist. You have to make your way to the Las Venturas Dam and arm some explosives that will be set to go off during the heist to knock out the city's power and cover the break-in. First, you have to fly almost all the way to the game height limit for some reason, which takes just shy of forever before parachuting in. And I have no idea why you need to parachute in to begin with. Thankfully, like I said, once you're in the dam, stealth isn't imperative, so if you do mess up like I did several times, nothing will come of it. Well, other than a bit of damage taken. So you get in, take out who you need to, plant some explosives, and get out. Bing bang boom. I like that they made an area for this one mission, but man, it's just one big wide open room that's so easy to sneak around because of the abundance of blind spots and a lack of guards. There are some cinematic shots, like CJ diving off the dam or the plane crashing, which spices things up, but otherwise, this is a nothing burger of a mission that doesn't really interest me. It tries, and I can appreciate it objectively, but the result is a bit lame.
Ain't nobody gonna be riding in my hood.
I don't know about that, Holmes. Look, the whole city's going up.
On March 3rd, 1991, Los Angeles resident Rodney King was filmed being brutally beaten by police officers. On April 29th, 1992, 3 out of the 4 police officers involved were acquitted of all charges. This was the final act of injustice towards the African American community that sparked a 6-day riot in multiple regions of the Los Angeles metropolitan area. Why is this relevant? Because Grand Theft Auto San Andreas depicts their own version of the 1992 Los Angeles riots as a result of the main antagonist, Officer Tenpenny, being acquitted of all charges against him for all the horrible things he did. This is a mission near the end of the game, and this sparks a non-stop in-game riot that lasts until the end of the game. The history behind this mission is much more interesting than the mission itself, wherein you just need to drive Sweet back to Grove Street so he can lock everything down. The riot is fairly interesting in that you have people looting, fighting, and blowing up cars, but ultimately, getting Sweet back to the Grove isn't really a very interesting task to pull off with this excellent setup. I feel like the entire Los Angeles riot aspect of this game was underutilized, and you could have had an entire set of missions about locking down the Grove and protecting it from rioters. Plus, if the entire city is up in arms, that could have made for a couple interesting missions, but there's only 2 missions after this, and the amount of the city taken over by riots is only a small chunk. Driving through a war zone is somewhat thrilling, but what this all came down to is a whole lot of not much at all.
Come on with all the talking, man. Is you gonna battle Berkeley or what?
It's a fight to the death! Come hither!
New Model Army is such a goofy mission. Zero and Berkeley are 2 rival shop owners, and at the end of their sequence of missions, they've decided to have a final showdown. Loser leaves town. The objective? Guide Zero's remote control car into Berkeley's fortress by removing all obstacles in his path. I feel like the time limit for this mission is too generous. Even after clearing out all the tanks and removing every obstacle, I beat this mission with minutes to spare. I wish there was more challenge here other than having a time limit, or I wish they had a more stimulating time limit, so New Model Army ends up being a bit meh, to the point that not even the novelty of piloting an RC car in a tiny battlefield can save it much.
Man, they taking the yay shipment and the van, and Mike's still in the back.
Well, what we gonna do?
Ah man, Mike Torino, the giant douche who's the linchpin of, like, most of the game's plot. And the mission that shares a name with him is, it's alright. Torino is kidnapped and you have to track him down based on vague details and cell phone signal strength within a time limit before his battery dies and presumably he dies. There's a lot of back and forth here. Driving to a couple of potential locations that Torino could be before making your way to the airport where he is. Certainly not a bad mission, but I would like it more if the game simply gave you a hint of the general location you're supposed to go to before that location gets debunked in favor of the next location. You know, so you might have to organically intuit that you're supposed to go to the dock before being told that's not where he is, because the game flat out telling you where to go makes everything up to the reveal of Torino's real location pointless filler. And that way the time limit might have actually had a point. I like deductive puzzles, and that's a missed opportunity here that ends up making the driving feel slightly obligatory. Fixing this would otherwise make this mission pretty great, but as it sits, it's just decent if slightly bland.
We got a problem. Some punk-ass base-ass fool has been slanging to his Grove brothers.
Doberman is the mission that initially introduces the Gang Wars minigame, so it's instantly better than any other mission that has this as a basis, because at least it has an excuse that it was first. Still, a mission based on the Gang Wars minigame can only be so good, and this mission is decent at best.
How would you like to hit the St. Mark's Bistro?
A hit in Liberty City? Cool, but I'm gonna need some backup.
St. Mark's Bistro is the mission that eluded me for much of my childhood. For 2 out of the 3 playthroughs in which my save was soft-locked, for whatever reason, the call to activate this mission would never come, leaving me stranded in Las Venturas, which is a shame because I remember reading about this mission and being completely and utterly intrigued by the idea of traveling to a different city, Liberty City. The idea is, Salvador Leone wants you to go to the St. Mark's Bistro in Liberty City and take out Marco Forelli. Long story short, Caligula's casino had 3 crime families attached, the Sindaco family by this point had already been pushed out, and this is Salvador Leone's attempt to push the Forelli family out after they tried to take him out. So you have to fly a long way, and I mean a long way, before immediately warping into Liberty City. Quite frankly, it's a bit of a disappointment that we don't get to see more of Liberty City. You're essentially relegating it to this one building and a bit of a parking lot if you even go that far, which on one of my attempts, I did not. And otherwise, it's just a big, extended, repetitive gunfight with like 30 people. Kind of disappointing given the fact that they already had the entirety of GTA 3's map on hand. But that was probably asking too much for the PS2 disk storage capacity. Not a bad mission by any means, but the long, uneventful flight followed by the relatively small amount of action, you know, at least compared to the flight over, does kind of ruin whatever novelty the idea of going to Liberty City adds to the mission, and trust me when I say, there was a lot of missed potential with this setup. I can't stress that enough. But hey, it's cool to finally see the inside of St. Mark's Bistro, which has been a thing since GTA 3.
Hey, thinking of taking a little ride. 3 Deep mentioned a little something that might put us deeper in the game.
Oh yes, Wrong Side of the Tracks, the most infamous mission potentially in all of GTA history. You have to chase down a train on a motorcycle while Big Smoke takes out the people on top of the train. You want to hear a secret? Wrong Side of the Tracks is not actually a hard mission. Like, at all. It may have been hard when you were 10 years old, it certainly was for me, but the last 5 or 6 times I've played this mission, I never failed once. I did come close on this playthrough because Big Smoke evidently couldn't hit the guy on top of the train who'd fallen off and was hanging off the side, so we wasted some time, but I still finished it on the first try, not even that far out of the city. All you need to do is follow the damn train, by which I mean match the speed, then stay close, and Big Smoke should have no problem taking the people out. And in that regard, it's kind of a dull mission. You sit there and let Big Smoke handle all the serious business, and all you need to do is avoid obstacles, which is still insanely easy. Wrong Side of the Tracks is not hard, but it's also pretty uninteresting.
Okay, I mean, something terrible has happened to Johnny. I mean, he's in a shock-induced coma at the hospital.
So, you remember what I said earlier about it always being the third option, never the first or second? Well, this is another example of this. The mission is called Intensive Care, and the backstory is, there's this guy named Johnny Sindaco who's in a shock-induced coma due to something we did in an earlier mission. Another mafia family, the Forellis, want to wipe him out so they can move forward in taking over controlling interest in Caligula's casino, so Johnny's taken from the hospital by a couple of mafia guys to be whacked. Meaning there's 3 potential ambulances he could be in, so you have to track down all 3 of these ambulances one by one, and it's always the third one. I've never once gotten it on the first or second try. Feel free to let me know if you have. But I think getting it on the 3rd try is the point. Either way, once you track down the ambulance he's in, you have to steal it, then drive it over to the meatpacking facility where he can stay safe for the time being. There's really not much to say about this one. Having to go to 3 different locations around the city to do the same thing makes this mission repetitive, but I guess the ticking clock element is kind of fun. But I really don't have any strong feelings for this mission one way or the other. I'm just kind of apathetic. It's just not interesting.
At last, it works!
What works?
Oh, just a simple bit of electronic wizardry and intellectual bombast that hacks into the state-of-the-art satellite immobilization technology on board our target vehicle. Oh, me.
Zeroing in is the first of the Wang Car's string of side missions, and it's pretty easy. All you have to do is follow the GPS tracker to each beacon before the trail goes cold, so you can track down a special car and steal it. Not really anything more to this mission than that. You just track down a car and steal it. Bada bing, bada boom. It's mediocre, and I'm struggling to even think of anything to say about this mission, so I guess we're moving on then.
I've been following her for hours, but she stopped for nothing. You'd have to ram her off the road in order to get a chance to get her car, and you know a wrecked car is no good to us!
Puncture Wounds is up there as being one of the quickest missions in the game if you're any good whatsoever. There's a car that Caesar wants that is allegedly too fast for him to catch, so you need to pop the tires using spike strips, then the driver will get out and you can take it back to the garage. Literally nothing more to it than that. It's hard to judge a mission that's over as quickly as this one because it doesn't waste your time, but then again, it doesn't really leave any lasting impression. But hey, I'd rather have a mission that's quick and easy over something that's long and tedious, but much like the last mission, Puncture Wounds is just kinda there.
No, dog! Get a grip, dude! Get a grip! You still got it? You still gangster?
Okay, well, this mission is going to be a bit hard to talk about because it has subject matter that YouTube has decreed I cannot talk about under any circumstances without getting demonetized and age restricted. Okay, so basically Mad Dog is the rapper that you screwed over at the behest of OG Alok earlier in the game. Now he's hit rock bottom. Essentially, there's something in this mission that results in Mad Dog being gravely injured, so you need to save him and drive him to the hospital afterward. There's not much to this mission either before or after Mad Dog's injury. It's short and pretty nondescript. It's just jack a car and then drive to a place. Although I do love that when you drop him off at the hospital, you literally just drop him face first on the concrete. You don't even get him into a wheelchair or a gurney. I will say though, this mission was the source of frustration back in the day. Fun fact, if you at any point in your save game activate the pedestrian riot cheat, it'll activate some sort of coding glitch which will make the event that results in Mad Dog getting injured happen almost instantaneously, essentially soft locking your game. I was 11 when I discovered that the hard way. I cried my eyes out. It was the first of 3 times that my game was soft locked.
You know the Forellis are sending over a crew to hit me. Their flight gets in soon. Traveling as a string quartet.
You know, my controller died halfway through the mission freefall, and I almost had to redo the whole thing. And that would mean redoing it a second time, given the fact that presumably the frame rate came into this and I seemingly couldn't fly fast enough to catch the plane, but I get ahead of myself. The Forelli family is sending a hit squad to Las Venturas to take out Salvador Leon, as I said earlier. And so it's CJ's job to intercept them, and this kind of does feel like a bit of a Mission Impossible style event, the way you have to jump out of a plane and onto another plane, but if we're being honest, that was the most interesting part of the mission, and it was just a cutscene. Then the actual mission is just a static gunfight in the plane where you have to fight everyone on the flight. There's a mission later on that involves fighting in a mid-flight aircraft that I think blows this mission out of the water in every way possible. As Freefall sits, it's theoretically interesting but really doesn't make the most out of its concept, making it basically okay.
I've got everything you need, lone traveler. It's in the mothership. Back there.
Alright, so Are You Going to San Fierro is a mission for the Truth, which was a follow-up to an earlier mission where you have to get him a combine harvester. Basically, Tenpenny set the Truth up so you have a limited time to destroy the entire farm before the police arrive. You get to play around with a flamethrower, and the controls start to become a little bit more loosey-goosey as CJ breathes in the smoke because of the dubiously legal substance we're burning. Then you have to deal with the helicopter that's following you. And then for some reason the Truth has a rocket launcher, strange for a peace-loving hippie to have one, but never mind. So once you shoot the helicopter down, which is no easy feat, you drive the mothership, the Truth's car, to your garage you won in San Fierro as a result of a mission that we'll get to momentarily. I wish the core of this mission was something a little bit more exciting than burning stationary objects, because stationary objects can't fight back. But I don't know, this mission is fine for what it is. There's certainly a level of stress with the time limit, especially when combined with CJ's altered state, but other than shooting down the helicopter, it's not the most action-packed mission. But then again, it didn't need to be. Not every mission needs to be Avengers Endgame. This is a decent, but by no means spectacular mission, and that's okay.
Long as they think Mr. Farley here is in the back, they'll follow me wherever. After a while, you can come out safely.
Stop me if you heard this one before. The mission lure is really overlong without much action. The idea of the mission isn't bad. Triad higher-up Ron-Fa Lee needs to escape the apartment building, but the entire apartment building is being watched by an enemy Vietnamese gang, so CJ has to lure them away by making them think that Ron-Fa Lee is with him. What this means is you have to drive all the way down to Angel Pine and do a little driving course without destroying the car and without the people pursuing you seeing inside the car. So it's a little bit more interesting than the average driving mission, but you still have to drive halfway across the map and then drive some more. Once things pick up, it's relatively interesting, but it takes a while to get there, so I give this mission some points.
Look, my cousin is coming in town from Mexico. I got to go scoop her up.
Running Dog is one of the shortest missions in the game if you have the equipment. In fact, I think if not for the drive to the location, it probably would have been the shortest. Basically, Big Smoke wants to buy some sweet green from one of the Vargo's gang members. There's a disagreement, Smoke knocks one of them out, and you have to chase down and kill the guy who runs away. Bada bing, bada boom. It's about as vapid as GTA missions get, but at least it doesn't waste your time, so I won't either.
Wootsy Moo, but my friends call me Woozy. How you doing?
Well, Woozy Moo is the mission where we meet, well, Woozy Moo, who's probably my favorite side character in the game, with the exception of maybe Torino, even though they're complete opposites, with the only thing in common being that they keep their word. This mission is just a race. It's a race where you have to bring your own car, and the Rancher is my go-to in this case, but it's a fun and somewhat challenging race across the countryside. It's pretty self-explanatory, what you see is what you get, and I enjoy the race for what it's worth. There's really not much else to say. Baba Booey.
It's too late! I don't love you no more. I love another, okay?
What?
So Farewell My Love must have been a somewhat late inclusion into the game or something, because the entire mission is just the Woozy Moo race, but with fast cars and in reverse. Literally, it's the exact same course, but backwards, 1 for 1. Were they lazy? Did they make this mission to save a bit of extra time to make other missions better, or were they just running out of time? Either way, this mission is marginally better than Woozy Moo because the cars are better, but it's still kind of a perplexing situation to have two identical races so close to each other. If this weren't recycled, then this mission would have probably placed higher. But anyways, you get a property deed for a garage in San Fierro that leads us into the next chapter. Meanwhile, Catalina runs off with this mute guy named Claude that sets up the events of GTA 3. Someday I want to do a video on how the 3D era GTA is all tied into each other.
After 5 years on the East Coast, it was time to go home.
Ah shit, here we go again. Possibly the most memed line in this game, which is fitting because it's also one of the first. But pop quiz, what is the second half of that line? Because I'm pretty sure most people who participated in that meme don't actually know what the second half of the line is. This mission is generally referred to as Introduction because unlike other GTA games, they don't actually name the first part of the game. But the basic gist of it is that you get thrown out of Officer Tenpenny's car right in the middle of enemy territory. So you have to get back to your childhood home on Grove Street. It's simple and iconic, and since you do have an objective, but you don't need to complete it until you feel like it, this mission exists as sort of a Schrodinger's mission where it both exists and doesn't exist, so you can do whatever you want. But once you're ready to go, you can hop on the bike or jack a car or whatever and make it over to CJ's mom's house. Nothing fancy, but it's a perfectly serviceable intro.
What about the police escorts? Whenever they move cash around, they use police motorcycles as outriders.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Cop Wheels is a mission where you have to steal some cop wheels. Kind of on the nose title-wise. Probably could have come up with a better name. This is a mission that's more like 4 mini-missions wearing a trench coat. You have to go around the city and get 4 separate police bikes from on-duty police officers and get it to a packer that's circling the city on the freeway. Plus, you have to do it within a certain time limit, and it's a time limit that's a bit on the tighter side compared to other missions throughout the game. Especially seeing as a couple of these police officers do not make it easy. So this mission can be a bit on the longer side compared to other missions in the game, which makes potentially failing the mission a pain in the ass. Still, I like the individual contextual instances of getting the cop bikes because there's always a mini action sequence to go along with it. And the inevitable wanted level makes it more exciting, but this definitely is a mission that would benefit from checkpoints. Matter of fact, I think if nothing else, that's one benefit of playing that crappy remaster over the original version, is not having to do everything in one shot. Regardless, even though this mission does drag, I don't hate it, but it certainly is not one that I relish returning to. It's somewhere in the middle. I feel like if this mission had a drop-off location that was relatively centralized to all the motorcycles rather than something you have to chase down, it probably would have fared better. Am I being too harsh? Maybe, because when I think back to this mission, I do really enjoy it, but it's just that length and the arduousness of getting all the motorcycles to the packer that I really don't like.
Hey, look, we gotta go do something real big. What up, kinfolk? Put Grove Street on the map for good.
Los Sepulcros apparently means the graves, or the burials in Spanish. I don't know which is more accurate, because I never learned Spanish. Well anyways, by the name of the mission, you can probably speculate that this mission involves a graveyard, and that it does. You grab some homies and ambush the ballas at the same graveyard that they ambushed you at the beginning of the game, which I haven't talked about yet. You roll in, take out some ballas, and one of them has a lot more health because he has a bulletproof vest, and that's all she wrote. It's a very standard mission with not much to go over. I guess it teaches you how to recruit generic Grove Street gang members, but I can't really think of anything else notable about the mission. I have no real issues with the mission other than the lack of substance, but let's keep in mind, like I said, not every mission needs to be a game changer. There's nothing wrong with having a mission that's short, simple, and to the point. Being just okay is okay.
A rival agency with a confused social agenda. They got things that we need.
There's something incredibly ironic about having a mission called Hijack in one of these games, because yeah, basically every mission involves a hijacking. What makes this one so special? But whatever. This is an incredibly quick mission if you know what you're doing. Essentially, at the behest of Torino, you have to hijack this tanker truck for no other specified reason than a rival agency with a confused social agenda has something that Torino needs. Which, knowing Torino, probably means something communism, something Middle East. Having James Woods as Torino really was on the nose, wasn't it? Well anyways, you have to grab Caesar and then get on a bike and drive alongside the tanker at the same speed until he can steal it, which is pretty self-explanatory. Then all you need to do is drive it back to your garage. Honestly, Caesar was acting like this was some sort of death sentence, but it's honestly significantly less dangerous than most of the other things that he and CJ have done in the game. But hey, it may not be the most interesting mission, but it does require some skill and it's over quickly, so I got nothing against it.
Yeah,
man, what you fools trying to eat?
That's
what about some tacos? Tacos? Again? Hell no.
Chicken, man. No discussion.
Man, I don't want no chicken.
Oh yes, Drive-Thru, the other mission with the most memed line in the game. I'll have 2 number 9s, etc. But the mission itself is over and done with in like 2 minutes. Matter of fact, that cutscene is probably longer than the actual action of the mission itself. You just have to drive everyone to the local Cluckin' Bell. Gotta love the Blackadder reference.
I think the phrase rhymes with clucking bell.
Then you get caught up in a drive-by with some ballas, so you have to take them out. There's some entertaining dialogue even during the shootout, but this mission is short, simple, and pretty much straight to the point, so it's not bad by any means, but there's not much to it.
Oh, good. That's great. Now we gotta go meet this shipment. We're late as it is. Let's go.
You know what's funny about the Loco Syndicate missions? Ryder's part of the Syndicate but never shows up. If he showed up, CJ's entire plan would go up in smoke. Anyways, T-Bone and Torino, after hazing CJ, task him with clearing a path for their truck using whatever he has at his disposal. The threat you're clearing comes in the form of several roadblocks that you have to demolish. It's a pretty decent mission for all the explosive gunfights that it has up its sleeve, explosive both figuratively and literally, but I never felt like the truck was in any sort of danger because it moves so slow I can comfortably take out all the roadblocks with time to spare. But hey, it's not just as simple as blowing a few things up. You also have to be observant to see all the hidden enemies. I wouldn't say this mission is bad in any way, but the leisurely pace definitely means it's not as good as it could have been.
CJ, go down there and show these fools you mean business. These chumps from the ballers are sweating the homies. Go put pressure on them. Let's do it.
Cleaning the hood is not a mission where you whack somebody's car hood, but it's another example of an early mission in every sense of the word. The name of the mission is pretty self-explanatory. You roll out to the hood and take out a dealer, and then you find out where his main source of substances is. Then you go and bust up fools with a baseball bat. Pretty simple, and it would have been pretty interesting if I didn't already have a gun by that point, but that's besides the point. It's kind of just okay to good. You just beat people up. Although I will say having this game be centered around the cocaine epidemic of the 90s really is a bold and confrontational thing to build the plot around. This being a key example of that, which I really appreciate. And hey, you can freely beat up Ryder, usually by accident, so this mission is actually pretty good.
But CJ's helping us clean up the hood. He's taking the fight to the enemy, showing all of us how he used to bang. Yeah.
Ah, this is it. The big first act twist. The Green Saber. Story-wise, this mission is great. Sweet and the other Grove Street members are united and are meeting up under the highway for reasons, but Caesar gives you a call and reveals the betrayal of Big Smoke and Ryder, as well as their involvement in your mother's death. Afterward, you make your way to what ends up being an ambush to save Sweet, which results in a prolonged gunfight. So yeah, the story's great. Gameplay-wise, it's just a drive to a garage and then a standard shootout. So the mission doesn't break any new ground, and if I were judging these missions for story context, this is top 10. As far as gameplay, it's pretty good. Not revolutionary or top tier, but good. Plus, it ends strong and is a pivotal moment for the game.
I am the real deal, fool. Oh shit. A genius.
Oh yeah.
Robbing Uncle Sam is a bit of a conflicting mission in that I feel like I should enjoy it more than I do. You have to roll into the National Guard depot and steal a bunch of weapons with a forklift. It feels a bit espionage-esque in how you have to break in by destroying the gate controls, plus it ends with a fun chase where you can throw the weapons out the back to blow up your pursuers. But I guess the actual act of robbing the army is a bit more fiddly than I would like. The forklift has really sensitive controls, and it feels like every time I'm on a roll I have to get out of the forklift to go save Ryder from one of the soldiers who decide to pop up. It wouldn't take a lot for this mission to be top tier, but I find the fiddliness to be a bit irritating, but I can't in good conscience rank it too low because it's a pretty cool and pretty fun mission for all its faults.
Hey, I get it wrong, you know? I'm imperfect, you know, like, hey, not a kind man, not a wise man, you know, not a smart man, but dear Lord, I tried.
Ice Cold Killa is by no means my favorite mission in the game, but it's responsible for one of my favorite lines in the game.
Here, take mine.
Where'd you get that?
Same place I bought my pants, Holmes. This is America.
That's hysterical. Although why you needed a silencer when you just roll in and hold a gun to his head is a mystery to me. The mission, however, is to roll up to the nightclub belonging to our original entry into the Loco Syndicate, Jizzy, take him out, and steal his phone to find out where the Loco Syndicate is pulling their big deal. Simple enough, and it is a very simple mission. Maybe even more simple by the fact that you can reposition Jizzy's car before he leaves, so my favorite thing to do is wedge his car someplace so I can immediately pull him out of his car and start blasting. So the action of the mission is very short if you plan ahead, otherwise you have to do a car chase. But either way, all this mission is a single gunfight followed by a car chase. Nothing special, but perfectly good. Maybe even better, in fact. Plus, I'm always in favor of missions with unique areas, and the nightclub is a pretty good, if small, unique area to stage a break-in. Good stuff.
Berkeley is back.
Oh, Berkeley.
Yes.
Who the f*** is Berkeley?
Some people consider the mission air raid hard. Personally, I got through it pretty easily. Another one I failed as a kid but never really had any trouble with as an adult. Essentially, Zero's antenna on top of his shop are being attacked by various RC planes piloted by enemy shop owner Berkeley. It's funny how this is presented as such a serious thing, but in this game of drugs and violence, we have a war between shop owners trying to destroy each other via remote control warfare because Zero won first place at the science fair. It's so off-puttingly juvenile for the game that it's kind of awesome. This is essentially just a turret section, but it's a really nerve-wracking one at that. You have a bunch of really tiny RC cars popping in with bombs that you have to destroy one by one before the antennas are destroyed. But if you keep your wits about you and focus on each of these enemies one at a time as they come, you should have no issues. I'm usually not fond of turret sections, but this one actually keeps the tension up, and since it's only really a one-time thing, I can accept it, especially seeing as it doesn't deviate too far from the established mechanics. It's a perfectly good mission.
For some reason, we've got a little problem with a former friend of ours. He seems to disagree with some of our methods.
No, who could do that?
Alright, Badlands. The first mission after CJ is exiled from Los Santos, and it's a favor to Officer Tenpenny. Great. So a witness is being protected by the FBI up on Mount Chiliad, and your task is to make it up there, kill him, get a picture of the body to prove he's dead, and get out. It's a mission that you could theoretically do stealthily, but you'll probably still end up alerting someone. If you don't make too much noise, it's pretty easy to get in and get out, but if you don't, you'll have to get into a chase with the witness. The atmosphere of Mount Chiliad makes for a pretty interesting setting for the mission, and getting into it with the FBI agents is pretty thrilling, especially if it leads to the aforementioned car chase. The actual meat of the mission is probably over within a minute or two, but it's still by no means bad. Far from it, and it's definitely elevated by the setting.
I need you to head over here in the buggy outside. Okay? Okay, let off a flare. We got some precious cargo needs collecting.
Hey, hold up.
Interdiction is a very strange word, but it's also one of the better missions in GTA San Andreas despite itself. You have to drive halfway across the Las Venturas desert in a dune buggy in order to get to where Torino wants you to go. Then you have to do some more driving up one of the desert mountains, only for the actual mission to kick in. There's a package that needs to be delivered, but rival agencies want the package, so they send in several helicopters, and what do you got? A rocket launcher. Ass slappage. They do not make it easy for you. These things are moving like Speedy Gonzales, so you have to be incredibly accurate with your shots, but also there's a chance that if you catch them at the wrong time, you'll be caught in the explosion. Even though it's only like 3 minutes, these are 3 of the most action-packed, exciting minutes in the entire game. Of course, after that you have more driving to do, and that's the main problem. This mission is a lot of build-up to the action, and the action is great, but does it make the long drive worth it? That's up to you to decide. For me, the action justified the rest of the mission for sure. So even if this mission isn't all action all the time, it's still pretty damn good.
The Shifu would like a package retrieved. A courier has left it in a drop at the airport.
Ronfa Lee is a character in GTA San Andreas, the leader of the family of triads called the Red Gecko Tong, which is fitting because he looks a bit like a gecko. He also shares his name with a mission where you have to drive down to the San Fierro airport, pick up a car, and drive it back. However, this car is booby-trapped and is under watch by the Da Nang boys, the Vietnamese gang Woozie is fighting, so naturally it's not as simple as it looks, although the great thing about a high frame rate in this game is that CJ has increased body mass. So you can just push some of these cars out of the way, but then you have to deal with the chase sequence. Then again, the AI of the people chasing you isn't the best, so sometimes they're a little bit too easy to get away from. The only dead space in this mission is driving to the airport, and it's not a very long drive. Then everything after that is go, 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 so it's a perfectly good mission with very little to complain about.
Hey, man, it's OG Loke, homie. OG Loke.
I think it's fair to say that OG Loke is the most annoying character in the game, a wannabe rapper who nobody takes seriously and whose voice acting is akin to a metal trash can being hit with a baseball bat next to my ear. Well anyways, OG Loke is the mission where you pick up the titular wannabe rapper from prison, then you have to hit up Loke's alleged prison lover Freddy and chase him down and take him out. Afterwards you drive Loke to his day job at Burger Shot. It's possible to take Freddy out before he gets to his destination because I've done it before, but it's very tough. It's an exciting and skillful chase ending with a fun shootout, but it's bookended by a couple of boring driving sequences with no stakes and no danger. So it's a fun mission with a couple of boring bits, but that chase makes it all worth it for me, so it's not a bad mission at all. Though keeping up with him can be a bit frustrating in that the window between making a mistake and Freddy getting away can be a bit small, but I enjoyed this mission regardless.
Yeah, I'm sure. How much they talking about?
It's our cash, your pink slip in the pie. Con Sanfose.
Some may get the impression through this list that I don't like the driving gameplay as much as I like the shooting gameplay. That's not true. I like driving as long as you're driving with a purpose, and what's more purposeful driving than a race? Step up, high stakes, lowrider. A mission where you race in downtown Los Santos in lowriders at the behest of Caesar. It's a fairly simple race, but one that's pretty decently designed, with plenty of twists and turns in the design, and that final stretch going into the Santa Maria Pier is a good touch. Though I did make the mistake of using the same car in this mission that I used for the mission where you first meet Caesar. Don't do that, because hydraulics make your car harder to control. It makes this mission unintentionally way harder, but I'm not going to dock points for that because that was my fault.
That's another funeral you ran away from, fool. Just like Brian's.
Hey, she was my mama too.
Not for the past 5 years, she wasn't.
The game's second proper named mission, Sweet and Kendall, certainly puts you right in the action. It starts off at the graveyard where they're burying the Johnson mother, but then you get attacked by some ballas, and now you have to make a run for it across town on some bikes with those ballas in hot pursuit. It's certainly a tense mission because you basically have no resources at this point, so you can't defend yourself, and it's not even that hard to get shot up quite a bit. It's a very simple mission, you just run the hell away on the lowest tech vehicle you could possibly run away on, but it has a sort of charming simplicity to it that starts you off at the absolute lowest point they could possibly start you out on. And hey, there is some organic excitement to the chase, so it's not a bad mission at all. In fact, it's pretty damn good. Starting the game off on a good note. It's simple enough that it can only be so good, but it's still pretty good.
There's 2 cars on the list, they say, and they're in the showroom across town. Let's go get them.
So I'm not gonna lie, I'm surprised they didn't call this mission Joyride, given that Joyride is the theme song for the first game in the series. In any case, Test Drive is a mission where CJ and Caesar steal a couple of cars from a dealership downtown and have to do some fancy driving to get away with them, dodging traffic and the cops and so on. I like the skillful driving they make you pull off. It's not the craziest series of handbrake turns and stunt paths, but it certainly doesn't mess around. So it's another driving mission that I quite like. No complaints here. But it's also pretty self-explanatory, so I won't bore you with any more details than I need to. You can see this mission and know exactly what you're getting into, and that's okay.
Leave the panic button or I'll kill your children too!
Against All Odds is another one of the heists with Catalina, and also shares a name with an old-school TNA wrestling pay-per-view that recently made a comeback. I only say this because I was a massive TNA mark back in the early 2010s. Well anyways, I could probably spend more time talking about my memories of Against All Odds than talking about this mission, because it's actually quite short. You roll into a betting shop, you rob the joint with satchel charges, then you get a 4-star wanted level and have to lose your police attention before making your way back to Catalina's house. In all honesty, I feel like we don't get enough missions that are as organic as this, just escaping a wanted level by any means necessary. Of course, there are only a few ways to escape your wanted level, so it can only be so organic, but setting you loose to play around and figuring out your own way through the obstacles is not a bad way to go, and the police chases are always fun. With that said, I would say this mission is so short and has so little going on that it can only be so good, but it's definitely not bad.
Your former friends have a factory. And the way I see it, if you take that out, you will have put them out of business for good.
Yay Kaboom Boom is probably the mission with the strangest name in the game, but it's the ultimate closure of the San Fierro chapter. The entire Loco Syndicate is dead, so now it's time to destroy their production facility. You get yourself a car armed with a bomb courtesy of Woozy, drive it straight into the heart of the production facility, blow the roof off the joint, and get out. It's a stimulating challenge getting into the facility and detonating the bomb without losing the car or getting yourself hurt. But where this mission really lets itself down is in the conclusion. They close the gate and you're supposed to use a car to ramp over the wall. Problem is, it's practically the most trivial thing in the world to just jump over the wall and then win. So if they made this a more vital part to the progression, it would end the mission strongly, but a weak conclusion with a strong foundation getting there still means this mission is pretty good.
That's Jizzy B. He's the biggest pimp in town. He helps set up the deals. You know, concierge of sorts.
Hey, then he my way in.
To quote the great Charles Wright, pimpin' ain't easy. Nowhere is that more apparent than in the mission called Jizzy, named after the aforementioned character that we take out later. Jizzy is a pimp and is your way into the Loco Syndicate, so you have to run some errands, drop off a hoe, kill a rival pimp, rescue a hoe, and then finally take out a hoe who's trying to run away with a client. It's a good thing this game is so over the top, because otherwise this would probably be pretty messed up. It's a good mission, it keeps you busy, and there's a bit too much back and forth for my liking, but it's varied in its tasks and does end with a bang. Literally. And if you want some fun, try activating the Cars Fly cheat playing this mission. It makes for some real fun.
It's time to get my old gang back together. Push out those yay-slanging punks, eh?
If there's one thing I can criticize GTA San Andreas for, other than all the other criticisms I've made today, I wish there was more to the game between the Los Santos riots starting and the final mission. Los Desperados is basically the only real mission between the 2 points in the story. So in the time since CJ left Los Santos, the Vargos took over the turf belonging to the Varios Los Aztecas, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is the gang that Caesar belongs to, so CJ has to help take back the territory from the Vargos. So it's a march down a couple of residential streets blasting everyone in sight with a few homies at your side. It's a pretty good mission, lots of action, and they do get a bit ridiculous when they break out the rocket launcher. The mission isn't the most varied, it's just a lot of killing with not much else, but the relentless action basically brute forces this mission into being fun. Although their dialogue on the ride over involves Caesar mentioning that he wants to pop the question to Kendall. It's a shame we never got to follow up on that, I feel like that would have made the ending better.
Now first we need to see what you're made of.
What it look like I'm made of? Pudding?
A monster, I've turned into a monster. The mission monster is pretty cut and dry. You have to prove yourself to some anonymous caller for some vague promise over your brother's safety. And all you need to do is drive an obstacle course in under 6 minutes and 20 seconds in a monster truck which takes you all over the Las Venturas desert. It's pretty simple. To me, what makes this mission is the vehicle. This is theoretically your first time driving a monster truck in the game, and it's a pretty fun car to drive, and also makes you feel like a big man, which is a plus. So for the novelty, the fun car to drive, and being a driving mission where the driving has a purpose, this is a perfectly good mission.
Hey, a baller's posse's about to run up. They're headed up here right now.
Looks like we backed them ballers against the wall, huh?
House Party is a mission that's simple but well executed. OG Loke is throwing a house party, but while that's going on, Grove Street is invaded by ballas. So you have to take out multiple waves from all sides. It's fairly short as far as combat missions go, as there's only like 3 waves, but there's also a certain freshness to fighting people on your own home turf, given the fact that the missions often entail you proactively going after another gang. Meaning this is one of the few defensive missions as opposed to offensive missions. Then that third wave where the ballas are coming out of the woodwork is tense every single time. It's kinda like one of the Gang Wars minigames, but with more creative enemy spawning, a higher concentration of enemies, and better story context. So this is a mission that stands up on its novelty, as well as its relatively action-packed pace.
Land on the train, kill the guards, get in and steal the stuff.
Oh yeah? What stuff?
As you're gonna see later, the mission Green Goo follows on from one of the best missions in the game. Unfortunately, it's not a worthy follow-up, but it would have a hard time being so. All you have to do is fly over a train with your recently acquired jetpack, that's damn right, jetpack, shoot some military personnel, grab some mysterious container filled with green liquid, and get back to the airstrip. It's fairly short and doesn't make the most out of the jetpack, and considering this is the only mission in the game that really tries to take advantage of it, that's a bit disappointing. With that said, still pretty good for what it is. They integrated the flying and shooting together pretty well, and for as short as this mission is, it never lets off the gas. So I have a hard time disliking this mission, and any use of the jetpack is good in my eyes. Not just in this game, but in general.
Mad Dog's rhyme book from his home in the hills. Mad Dog's rhyme book?
Mad Dog's Rhymes is the mission where they introduce a somewhat haphazard stealth mechanic. OG Loke wants you to steal the rhyme book of famous rapper Mad Dog. So you have to sneak into his mansion, stealth your way around his guards, take them out using stealth kills, and steal the book right from under everybody's noses. The stealth mechanics are actually fairly simple and unintrusive, plus there's a uniqueness to the gameplay when sneaking around slitting throats. It's not a mission type you get too often in this game, so for managing to do stealth in an unobnoxious way and having some novelty, this actually is a pretty good mission despite what you may think going into it.
There's a train gonna make an unscheduled stop just down the way. It's got a, how you say, little something on board for you boys.
God bless us everyone, we're a broken people living under loaded gun. That's an excerpt from the Linkin Park song Catalyst, which I was obliged to bring up since I really like that song, which also happens to share a name with this mission. A train loaded with explosives is making an unscheduled stop, so you need to roll in with the homies and fight off both Ballas and Vargos, and then you have to toss some explosives to Ryder while the train is moving. Definitely one of the better early game missions, plenty of action, and a one-off mechanic to boot. I'm also glad that they're a little bit forgiving when it comes to tossing the explosives and missing, because if they decided to make Ryder explode with the same ease as any other car at any other point in the game, this would be a much worse mission. Because by all rights, he should have exploded like 3 times here. There's not much to it, but it's solid for what it is, and the tossing minigame requires a type of finesse that not too many other missions require, so yeah, I like this one.
I need to go teach him a little respect, huh? That's right. Yeah. I've been thinking about getting me some new land anyway.
Deconstruction is a mission where you have to take out the construction crew operating in the yard just above your garage in San Fierro. You have to take out all their portables while contending with construction workers that have weapons ranging from shovels to guns, then bury the foreman in cement while he's in a porta-potty. This mission is fun and funny while it lasts. You're supposed to use a bulldozer to take out the portables, but I had some extra rocket launcher ammo from a previous mission, so I was able to find my own way here, and there's an innate humor to the porta-potty thing, so for making me chuckle and being good in its own right, this mission can slot its way right into the upper side of the list.
I guess we gotta make a plan.
Speaking of plans, do you have the layout to Caligula's casino?
I feel bad for the Caligula heist string of missions. As great as the heist itself is, the lead-up is inconsistent. I'd say architectural espionage is on the better end for that mission sequence. You have to get the architectural layout of Caligula's casino, so you have to go to the city planning department to get a picture, but oops, pictures aren't allowed. So you have to start a fire to get everyone to evacuate before taking a picture. Then you have to fight your way out, then get back to the casino with a wanted level. No easy task, so make sure you have a good car parked outside, and make sure to fill up your health with the vending machine inside before you leave. Everything leading up to taking the picture is fairly milquetoast, but fighting your way out and making it back to the casino is a real stimulating challenge, especially as you're faced with stiff opposition going down the stairs. Plus, this is an elaborate building they made just for this one mission, so I really appreciate it for that. It really complements the action, so this is actually a pretty damn good mission. As a side note, if you don't have a camera going into the mission, you have to kill some nearby tourists to get one, which is good. That's what they deserve.
We got the cash. Let's get out of here. Those maricon bastards have our money.
I like chase missions, and I especially like chase missions where the primary vehicle is one that's not a very common vehicle in the game, which is why the local liquor store mission in the string of heists with Catalina is pretty fun. CJ and Catalina roll up to rob a liquor store, but a couple of redneck bumpkins roll in just before you do to rob the place, so you need to chase them down on an ATV and take them out. This is theoretically a pretty quick mission because these are enemies that don't need to be killed in any context-specific way, and they don't expect you to get to their final destination before you kill them, so with a little bit of good aim and a bunch of ammo, you can chase them down and take them out real quick. But the chase itself is exhilarating as any good chase, so local liquor store gets my stamp of approval.
I'm pinned down in Seville Hood, and we need a ride out of here. Pronto.
Oh, for sure, man. Hang in there.
Sweet's Girl is a mission that genuinely confused me growing up, but that's because I really didn't understand the dynamic of the Grove Street families, so I had no idea why homies were fighting homies. Granted, this is the only case of that happening before you reunite the families and get kicked out of Los Santos. As a matter of fact, this is not just the only time you see homies beefing, but it's also the only time you ever see Sweet's girlfriend, who's just this generic female model. Seems like they were setting some things up that ultimately never came to be. Regardless, Sweet is cornered by a couple of homies from a fractured part of the Grove Street families, and you have to roll in, save Sweet, and get back home. It's a bit hit and miss as far as difficulty. Some playthroughs I can get through on the first try, and other playthroughs I get absolutely riddled with bullet holes. But it is very simple conceptually. It's a short but action-packed and fun little nugget of gameplay. You got a fun gunfight, then a fun chase sequence. It doesn't waste a moment of your time, and it's pretty exciting. So this is a damn good mission.
You want a stomach ulcer? Try opening a triad casino in a mafia-run town.
The mob trying to squeeze you?
Yeah.
Fender Ketchup is sort of the unofficial beginning of the end of the game for me. It's where you really start to enter the final stretch. This is the beginning of Woozy's casino arc. The Four Dragons Casino is being harassed by associates of the Mafia because they don't like other gangs trying to muscle in on their turf. One of Woozy's gang members captures one of the people sabotaging the casino, so Carl tells them to strap him to the front of a car and let CJ have a little bit of fun with him. That way, he can try and figure out which of the 3 Mafia families in the city are staging these attacks against the casino. So this mission is pretty free-form. All you need to do is scare the guy until he confesses which family he belongs to. You do this through crazy driving. Driving on the wrong side of the road, speeding, going over stunt jumps, all the fun of the fair. So once again, it's a fun driving mission where the driving has a purpose, and it gives you an excuse to practice skillful driving. Doing all this fun stuff without getting into a head-on collision, which will fail you the mission. Fun, uncomplicated stuff.
I'm about to drop in on a local triad that failed to show face at the last Tong meeting. Come with me.
Mountain Cloud Boys is a good mission that almost completely soft-locked my game. Essentially, you just drive Woozy around the block to his associates and you're ambushed by Vietnamese gang members. So you have to kill a bunch of them and then kill some more in your car. But the game soft-locked my controls multiple times after getting out of my vehicle, and when I finally sorted that out, Woozy's AI completely died on me for a little while so he wouldn't get into my car. I finally reactivated his brain by moving too far away from him. This is all a shame because this is a pretty good mission. It's a fairly standard mission setup with you having to fight your way out of a closed off area and kill some people in a car, but standard is still good. It's basically the type of mission you sign up for when you're buying this sort of game. So aside from the nearly game-breaking elements of this mission, definitely a mission that pulls its weight.
Then them some pretty strong draws.
Supply Lines is the second mission with Zero, and is yet another one that people tend to have issues with, but once again, not something that I had any trouble with. In fact, I really like it. After Berkeley took the attack to Zero's shop, now you have to take the battle to him by destroying his delivery business, and it was already kind of funny that all these borderline terroristic actions were happening over a science fair prize, but now you are literally killing otherwise innocent people for the sake of this little petty squabble between two nerds. Basically, you have to destroy a number of delivery vans and vehicles, then fly back to Zero's shop with limited gas. As long as you take note of where each target is and plan your route accordingly, you won't run out of gas, but I do question why that's even a mechanic, within the context of the world, that is. I mean, if this thing has a GPS tracker in it, can't you just pick it up from where it ran out of gas if this one RC plane is important enough that you can't risk losing it? I don't know, why can't CJ just roll in and bust some heads? The flying controls are somewhat more slippery than regular planes since you're smaller, but I got used to it. And I found it somewhat zen to just fly around the city in a small plane, especially seeing as planes are usually far too big to just cruise around at low altitudes in a city. And this plane doesn't have a tendency of blowing up on contact. For what it's worth as well, there are precious few plane combat missions in this game, so this is one that stands out for sheer novelty. So screw you, I like Supply Lines.
That's my money! And those are my hoes! And that's my video he's shooting today!
Cutthroat Business is the resolution to OG Loke's storyline. After all the work that CJ put in earlier in the game to sabotage Mad Dog to help OG Loke, the shoe is on the other foot now. You're Mad Dog's manager, and now you have to chase down OG Loke and get Mad Dog's rhyme book back, as well as expose Loke for the fraud he is. This mission is essentially just an extended chase sequence, but what elevates it are the vehicles. You have to find OG Loke in a dune buggy, and then you have to chase him down in a hovercraft and later, a go-kart. It's so stupid, but it's so funny that it makes this mission great. You're once again driving with a purpose, not driving across the map for the sake of nothing in particular, and like some other missions, it's elevated by the novelty of its progression. It's a little bit of an anticlimactic payoff given that OG Loc was at least partially in on the whole Big Smoke situation, but he's also a pathetic pretender, so going out in a fizzle of shame is probably better than what he deserves. Though why Loc never told Mad Dog that CJ was in on his downfall, who knows. Seems like that's just a plot hole they never really resolved.
Boss, take a look at these 2 chips.
One's a fake.
That's amazing. You didn't even touch him.
No, I just took a guess.
You've Had Your Chips is a mission where some counterfeit chips have made their way into Woozy's casino, although they only notice because the counterfeit ones have distinct differences compared to the normal ones. I hope somebody got whacked for that mistake. They trace the fake chips to a plastics factory owned by the Sindako family. So pretty simple, you find your way to the plastics factory, blow up all their machines, and get out. Easier said than done though, because those machines are resilient and there are a lot of gang members with high-powered guns protecting the place, so you best be careful. I find this to be one of the more challenging missions in the game because of how well hidden these gang members are and how powerful their backup is. I usually just don't quite have enough health to get through this, and it takes a few tries, which is good. This game doesn't always feel the most challenging, so it's nice to have a mission that properly challenges me. It's a simple but stimulating combat mission with a clear goal that's satisfying to complete. Pretty good all around.
I am the boss. All right then. All right. Let's tear this town up. That's what I'm saying. So where we going?
This one's just funny. So Ken Rosenberg, the lawyer from Vice City and the middleman in charge of Caligula's casino, wants out. So in the mission The Meat Business, he wants to go talk to Johnny Sindako about doing so. Unfortunately, Carl has failed to mention that he was the one who put Johnny in the hospital. So they go to the meat packing facility, and Johnny sees CJ and immediately keels over dead, which I think is the only time that CJ playing both sides actually bites him in the ass, which is funny because of how often he does it. This of course launches us into a pretty significant combat sequence where you're trying to get out of the factory and back to the casino with 100 members of the Sindako family cornering you with guns and even Molotovs. This is a really combat heavy mission to the point that it almost borders on excessive. But I feel like the unique design of the building allows for somewhat tactical gameplay in flanking your opponents and taking them out in an optimal way while minimizing damage to yourself. I feel like I'm more forgiving towards missions that have excessive amounts of action over excessive amounts of driving, because action is by its very nature more stimulating as you're always accomplishing something meaningful, whereas driving long distances with the only goal being to get somewhere can be white noise. Pretty damn good mission with an action-heavy component, but the lack of variety does knock it down a few pegs from what could have been a top-tier mission. If they added a bit more variety to the gameplay, this could have been a top 10 contender, but otherwise it's still pretty damn good. On a side note, I think I remember it's possible for Ken to be locked in the freezer, but that never happened here.
What? I'm working for you now?
I'm a man of peace, but some squares across that ridge are not respecting my peace.
Body Harvest is a mission where you first meet the Truth, some old hippie dude who's probably been tripping on at least 17 different substances at all times since the 60s. He needs you to go into a survivalist farm and steal their combine harvester. And these people are packed to the nines and offer some fierce resistance, so this is a pretty damn hard mission, surprisingly. But it's also fun to fight your way through the place, facing foot soldiers and tractors to get the combine harvester. It's a little bit awkward to drive on the street, and the rednecks still chase you even after you're gone, so I'm not gonna lie, I did fail this mission quite a few times in the past due to these two elements, but it's an exciting mission with plenty of action, a bit of variety, and is stiffer than a double-shot screwdriver, so any complaint is pretty much null.
My man found that van you were looking for, by the helipad downtown.
And Torino?
Yep, he's there.
Torino's last flight is an interesting case because he's the only one in the entire Loco syndicate to get away, so now you have to track him down and take him out once and for all, thus ending the Loco syndicate. You go to the San Fierro police station where you're faced with stiff opposition, including a guy with a rocket launcher, but you of course have to get the rocket launcher for yourself, and once that helicopter takes off, it's up to you to track it down and blow it out of the sky. It's actually a real tough mission because of the opposition you face. Aside from all these gang members or whoever at the police station, you'll no doubt end up with a wanted level, so you have to hit a moving target while also facing opposition from the police. You also don't have as much time as you think. The helicopter doesn't go too far beyond the city limits before it reaches its destination, so it's a hard mission, but despite being short, it manages to switch things up a few times. So as far as putting the final nail in the Loco Syndicate, it's a pretty excellent mission, if a little too short.
You know what? There's an open cast mine southwest of the city limits. They must have explosives.
I'll go peep it out.
Explosive Situation is a mission that starts off okay but not great, then gets really fun. So you have to go to the mines on the outskirts of Las Venturas and get some high-powered explosives. All you do is break open some boxes with a giant construction truck and grab the explosives while dealing with the odd mine worker with a weapon and of course a time limit. But things get really interesting once you have the explosives. A company called Chuff Security is called in to protect the entrance. You can face them head on, but the intended strat is that they give you a motorcycle and a stunt path, so what they want you to do is get out of the quarry without facing them head on using these tools. It's not a very hard stunt path. Obviously they're trying to be accessible, but it's still intricate enough that it's fun to pull off. Plus, you don't have very many times in the game where the object of the mission is to drive a stunt path, so it gets points for uniqueness like some of the other missions in the game. This is one that genuinely surprised me, and definitely in a good way.
We don't like him, and he don't like us. Now you make sure he never leaves the neighborhood, not even in a box.
So Burning Desire is a mission where you're introduced to a few things. Throwable weapons, fire control, and relationships to name a few. There are some gang members who aren't playing ball with 10 pennies, so he needs CJ to go torch their house. You collect some Molotovs, then throw them through some windows, take some people out, and when the fire is at its worst, some innocent girl is trapped in the house. So you run in, take out the fire with a fire extinguisher, and save her. After you drive her home, she's your girlfriend, which introduces a dating mechanic. This is a loaded mission, but I like it. Basing the action around Molotovs makes it a unique mission compared to the rest of the game, and putting out a fire is also something that's a simple mechanic that has potential for some timing-based challenges, but really didn't come up much after this. So, once again, points for uniqueness. I can take or leave the relationship thing, but I do find it funny that she falls for you after saving her from the fire that you started. I'd like to see her reaction to that if it ever came up during Pillow Talk. Either way, this mission is pretty good, with a little bit of everything, and the different mechanics this mission bases itself around from point to point means that it keeps you guessing and never lets off the gas. Good stuff.
Man, damn. Hey man, I gotta bounce.
Oh no, you don't. I invented that trick, baby. Carl, come with me. We're gonna have to bust us a couple of melons up in here.
The San Fierro chunk of the game is where things really start to pick up. It's a gradual process, but one that's certainly noticeable. Part of this escalation is the mission T-Bone Mendez. A truck carrying some yayo gets ambushed by a group of bikers, and it's your job to get the yayo back. This is one of a small handful of motorcycle-based missions, and it's pretty fun. You can take them out if you wish, or you can go the pacifist route and just grab the packages off the back of their bikes. Either way, the increased maneuverability of the motorcycles makes the driving more skillful, and the ever-present threat of falling off at the slightest impact makes this mission organically exciting. Chasing down goons as they weave in and out of traffic is exciting and makes it all the more cathartic to take them out or make them crash. It's pretty good all around, and there's nothing like cutting off a biker at the pass and then yoinking the package straight off their bike. Granted, there's 4 of them, so by the time you get down to the last one, it can be a bit of a drive to get them back, but I'd say the chase is worth it. T-Bone Mendez is a fun-ass mission.
What things, fool?
My homie LB, he told me about this army who got all the guns we need.
Home Invasion is an early mission that introduces one of the better side modes in GTA San Andreas. You have to rob a senile war veteran's house for all the weapons he's stashing without making too much noise, otherwise he wakes up and then Ryder abandons you. And Ryder wants to call CJ a busta. Hypocrite. So this is one of a number of missions that are greatly affected by the frame rate. I found that if I didn't have the frame limiter on, I got caught basically immediately, but once that's all accounted for, the Home Invasion minigame is one of the better ones in the game because it's one of the few times the token stealth mechanics come into play, and there's a certain charm to be able to walk into near enough any residential home in the game and start taking stuff, and this is no different. There's a sinister pleasure in making it in and out without making any noise, and I find myself stealing every single package even if I don't need to. So yes, yes, as simple as Home Invasion is, I really enjoy it. And I really enjoy the minigame that it introduces. I'm not sure what that says about me. Side note, notice Ryder vanishing? Curious.
I'm going to empty the safe. Keep these idiots covered.
All right, you heard the lady.
Small Town Bank is definitely the best heist with Catalina. You go down to the bank and you have to do the classic stick-up thing where you have to point the gun at everyone in turn to make sure they don't lower their hands. But inevitably you fail, so you ransack the place and have to fight your way through a specifically predetermined sequence of police before getting into a police chase. Now, I do like missions that are open and organic, but I also really like missions that have a deliberate, tight design to them. And this is one of the tighter missions in the game as far as design. You find yourself following this sequence of events, a shootout followed by a police chase, and in the end, Catalina crashes and you have to make your way to her before making it back to her place. It's one of those early missions that have a bit of everything. Action, exciting chase sequences, a fun getaway, it's all there and it's all pretty fun. And plus, it's also relentlessly paced in that it never lets its foot off the gas. I have absolutely no complaints with Small Town Bank. It's a great mission, and in spite of the fact that you can pick any of the 4 Catalina heists to play in any order, this definitely feels like it was intended as the payoff to this sequence of missions.
Hope we didn't keep you waiting, Holmes.
Nah, I was just chilling.
I bet you were. At the dossier?
Finally, we get to take some measure of revenge against Tenpenny and his goons. So you're handing over a dossier of info to Tenpenny, and after Tenpenny leaves, there's a sequence of events that leads to the death of Officer Hernandez, and Tenpenny's right-hand goon, Officer Pulaski, makes a break for it. So now all you need to do is kill Officer Pulaski. Let me tell you, it is one of the most satisfying deaths in the game. He is Tenpenny's muscle, so he's been the one primarily physically antagonizing Carl the entire game. So it feels great to put that man in his place. All you need to do is chase down his car and take it out by any means necessary. It's a simple mission that shouldn't take you too long, but man is it satisfying. But I do have one question. So CJ initially does work for Tenpenny because Tenpenny is threatening to frame CJ for the murder of a cop that Tenpenny and his crew killed. So why now, from a story perspective, does CJ decide to throw caution to the wind and kill Pulaski? Is it because Tenpenny's not there? Is it because Pulaski is going to frame CJ for the murder of Officer Hernandez too? Why is CJ suddenly okay with doing what he was framed for? Like I said, from a story perspective, not a gameplay perspective. Post your theories in the comment section.
Have you ever seen those helicopters they use to lift heavy loads?
Yeah, they call them sky cranes. We could lift the whole truck and take them to someplace safe.
Up, Up, and Away is kind of a funny mission because this is one of the missions leading into the heist on Caligula's casino, but hilariously, you face stiffer resistance in this mission than in the actual heist. Basically, you have to steal a sky crane from a military fuel depot so you can steal an armored truck without raising too much suspicion. But they do not mess around at the fuel depot. You have to take out dozens of army personnel armed with M4s. I may not know much about guns, but I do know that an M4 will ruin your day. You even have to fight a couple of helicopters after you make your way to the top of the complex. All this is the fun part, and that fight through the facility is really fun with plenty of unique areas and a real sense of escalation as you take out more and more people. The last part of the mission, however, is after you get the sky crane, you have to travel across the city, get an armored truck, and then fly it all the way back to the abandoned airstrip, and the armored truck weighs down your helicopter like crazy, making it an incredibly arduous flight getting to the airstrip. So this is like half a fantastic mission, half an arduous mission, so it's definitely in the high upper tier, but if they found a way to make the second half better, this could have been an absolute top tier mission, especially considering how thematically you're going one-on-one against the entire army in a complex made specifically for this mission. That's pretty badass. But alas, still I can't help but put this one as high as it is because the first half was just that cool.
Peep this. We're going to unite the families once more because the ball has been pumping our guys full of bass for too long while we argue amongst ourselves.
Even though reuniting the families is the mission that takes place before the final mission in Los Santos, it does feel like the climax of the first act, so to speak. After scratching and clawing your way to getting Grove Street families back to prominence, Sweet wants to hold a meeting for all the different families so they can reconcile and take back Los Santos. Unfortunately, the location of the meeting was tipped off to the police mysteriously, and they send the SWAT team in, so you have to run through a rundown motel, shooting your way through SWAT team member after SWAT team member to rescue Sweet, and then you escape and CJ has to take out all their pursuers manual aiming, predetermined path style. This mission is non-stop from the word go, and it's a very exciting, high-stakes mission. It has a good length, and the mid-mission switch in gameplay lends it some compelling variety. No doubt I love this one. Plus, it has one of the better endings in all the missions in the game. Very classy, Rockstar.
Alright, so let me get this straight. You want me to swim around in dirty dock water, dodging little brown jelly beans and Vietnamese gangsters, to put a bug on a boat in the harbor?
Amphibious Assault is probably one of the more infamous missions in the game, and that's for good reason. It doesn't let you start the mission unless you have a certain level of lung capacity, and the only way to get lung capacity is by swimming underwater for minutes on end. It's really tedious. Let's get something straight though, the lead up to this mission sucks. The mission itself, once you actually get into it, is pretty fun. In fact, it's damn good. You have to do a little obstacle course, then you have to stealth your way onto a boat being guarded by a bunch of smaller boats, then plant a bug and get away. The stealth is tense, and the espionage-feeling action is really cool. I just enjoy this type of thing. Though I found the easiest way to do this mission is to get on this small chunk of land and just cap all the people in the smaller boats, destroying the searchlights and getting onto the ship relatively unimpeded. Still, the stealth aspect, the espionage-style action, the various boats surrounding you, it actually makes for a thrilling mission that feels quite unique for this game. I can't get too much of this sort of thing.
I'm saying they're making friends, cutting deals, and tooling up for more than half-assed drive-bys. Lots of cheap guns coming into America since the fall of the wall, Carl.
In November of 1989, mass protests and loosening restrictions led to the fall of the Berlin Wall, effectively reuniting capitalist West Germany and the communist East Germany. This was part of a series of historical events that eventually led to the dissolution of the USSR in December of 1991. Why is this important? Well, GTA San Andreas is set in 1992, and so according to Tenpenny, the Russians have been making their way over ever since the fall of the wall, and are sticking their noses where they don't belong. Hence the mission Grey Imports, where the Russians are making arms deals with the Ballas, and you have to shut that down at the behest of Tenpenny. Grey Imports is yet another mission from early in the game that kinda kicks ass. You have to take out a whole bunch of people on the outside in order to make your way into the building, at which point you're faced with people coming out of the woodwork. And it's all very exciting, and then you finally get to the Russian arms dealer, but he makes a run for it. It's entirely possible to take him out before he gets into his car, but that's risky. It's smarter to get onto the motorcycle here and chase him down, and this chase takes you into the waterway areas of Los Santos, which is quite frankly a very underused area of the map. I think only one mission other than this one makes you go there, and it's such prime real estate for fun chases, and while this chase can end pretty quickly, it's no less fun for its novelty of location, and a good chase is always fun. This mission, once you get into the freight depot, is fun and action-packed all the way through and ends with a bang. Nothing more you could ask for.
Now you get the dossier and you make both of them disappear.
Misappropriation is one of those cases where you can very easily cheese the entire thing if you know what to do. You have to take out a DEA agent who has a dossier of evidence against Tenpenny. The idea of the mission is you're supposed to fight through a series of FBI agents and chase the DEA officer in a helicopter, but if you approach from the rear without alerting anybody, you can actually take out the DEA officer immediately. But the mission is more exciting if you take the long way. A fun helicopter chase over the military base which causes you to get a wanted level, meaning that you have to fight stiff resistance en route to getting the dossier, including in my case, a fighter jet. And it's a pretty entertaining chase. I'm going to assume that if you let the officer get into the parkade, it turns into a car chase, but I've never let it get that far. I guess stuff like this is why later GTA games made things so scripted at times, but still, this is a really exciting mission.
Alright, man. My mansion's been seized.
IRS?
Nah, not exactly.
Oh man, the return to Los Santos. Now this is a mission that I coveted for a very long time, and it does not disappoint. Mad Dog is out of the hospital after his brush with death, but as it turns out, during his downfall, his mansion was seized by the Vargos, headed by a pusher named Big Papa. This entire mission plays out like a Churchill speech.
We will fight on the rooftops. We will fight in the entrance halls. We will fight with AKs and SMGs in the air. We shall defend our mansion. Whatever the coast may be, we will fight in the bar, we will fight in studio, and in the pool. We shall never surrender.
Okay, well that was a better idea in my head. Much like many of the best missions in the game, this one has a little bit of everything. You start out by jumping out of a plane, which is always exciting, and then it's non-stop, over-the-top action sequences until the very end as you're fighting through the mansion, where it's all capped off with a car chase. The hits don't stop coming with this one, and it's one of the most consistently fun missions in the game as a result.
Yo, government agent?
Kill Schmill, come on, don't look at it that way. Will you think of it as pest control? It works for me.
Remember earlier when I was talking about how Freefall is a somewhat negative example of a mission involving breaking onto a plane and killing all the inhabitants, and that there was a much better example of the same idea? Well, this is it, the mission called Stowaway. You have to quickly ride onto a cargo plane loaded up with weapons at the behest of Torino. Then you have to get a parachute, plant a bomb, and escape. You don't technically need to kill everyone, but you're basically going to either way. You have a narrow passageway, obstacles to avoid, a contextual reason to use melee over guns, given the fact that the entire plane is loaded up with explosives, and it's all complemented by the opening, which is a really tightly timed chase sequence that's very easy to miss. This is a very distinctive and exciting mission. And I must say, I think my favorite part of Stowaway might be what happens if you jump out of the plane without a parachute. Now that's funny.
Wanna go for a ride?
Yeah.
You drive.
Alright.
We going downtown.
Just Business is easily the best mission in the entirety of the early game, so Big Smoke, in his continued efforts to try and get CJ killed low-key, gets them into a direct confrontation with the Russians. The first chunk of this is a gunfight in this weird atrium area, and I remember finding this interior area before I'd actually played the mission, and man, it intrigued me the first time. Made me wonder what possible business could take place here. It's a pretty fun shootout inside and then outside, but this is where the mission goes from pretty good to instant classic. Big Smoke takes the wheel and now you're the gunner and you have to protect the bike, and it turns into this ridiculous scripted chase scene where you're being chased by a big truck, motorcycles, cars, and so on, all the way through the Los Santos waterways. These games are at their absolute best when they are ridiculously over the top, and being chased by a small army of Russians and having awesome set pieces all the while making an exciting getaway, that is classic, and I love the ending stretch where you have the explosive barrels to take out the last few Russians. Really is just the cherry on top. Just Business is awesome.
We got a problem. I got some guys out in the field need some equipment. If they don't get it, they'll be dead by nightfall.
For as many planes as they have in this game, they really don't have many straight-up flying missions, and definitely not many that require actual skill, which is why NOE is one of the better flying missions in the game. A couple of Torino's contemporaries are in trouble and need some supplies airdropped to them in Angel Pine by nightfall, and Torino can't do it because he has too many people watching him. And the twist with this one is you need to stay below a certain altitude, otherwise you'll be detected on government radars and will be shot out of the sky. So you have two options. You can either take the easy route and fly over the sea around San Andreas, or you can take a chance with flying through the desert, parts of San Fierro, and finally the countryside, which is insanely hard if you don't know your route. What makes this part even harder is how many of these trees will pop in on you, so you have to be extra super careful, but if you manage to get through it unscathed, it's the most satisfying feeling. I feel like this is a mission that would definitely have been better if there wasn't so much pop in, but you can work your way around that. Besides, I managed to get through it fairly easily. The only issue is, if you do happen to fail, you have to fly your way back to the abandoned airstrip on the north end of San Andreas from the nearest hospital to where you crashed. And that is really irritating to have to travel that far in these missions where you have to go across the state. Stuff like this is why the Hydra jet sheet is burned into my skull. Triangle, triangle, square, circle, X, L1, L1, down, up. Or on PC, it's jump jet. Also, is it just me, or is Angel Pine quickly becoming low-key one of the most important locations in the entire game?
We all good?
Yeah, we're good.
Alright, see you at the back door. Let's roll.
Ah man, this is the big one. Breaking the bank at Caligula's. The heist you spent like a dozen missions setting up, both directly and indirectly, and it does not disappoint. For once, I'm not going to go beat for beat because we'd be here for a while, but you make your way in disguised as an employee, blow up the generators to cause a blackout, get your partners in via forklift, and make your way into the belly of the beast facing wave after wave of opposition en route to and from the safe, all under the pressure of a time limit. Then you have to get out on your own with a wanted level. Either you get a parachute and jump to this helicopter, or you drive, and this jump eluded me for so long, but this time, I made it. I don't know how I made it, but I casually flew my way back to the abandoned airfield, and no joke, I had a smile plastered on my face flying back that you could not get off. Anyone who's played this mission knows how tough that jump is. Also, points for novelty being the only time you fly a police helicopter in the story mode. This mission is long and busy, but it's all business all the way through, with exciting action around every corner, and opposition possibly equal to the army, and a satisfying conclusion. Tonally and thematically, it might be the most epic mission in the entire game, and it certainly feels like it. I've left out some details like I said, but rest assured, breaking the bank at Caligula's is technically an optional mission, but it is a must-play. This mission eluded me for so long growing up because it was always a few missions after my game soft-locked itself, but man, it was worth it.
Hey, okay. Yeah, I see you. That was Woozy's boys. They're in place. Look down by the side entrance.
Pier 69 is sort of a second act payoff of sorts, as well as a payoff to the entire San Fierro chunk of the story. The Loco Syndicate is pulling their deal at Pier 69, and you have to stop it and take out all the members involved, including your old homie Ryder. Ryder wasn't originally intended to be a villain in this game, and was only written that way after a sudden dispute with the voice actor, but that's besides the point. This mission starts with a bit of sniping, as the Mountain Cloud boys have come to assist you in taking out the people on the roof, and then the deal starts and is immediately sabotaged because Torino, coming in on a helicopter, saw the dead bodies on the roofs and made a run for it. So now you have to roll in, take everyone out, including T-Bone and Ryder. It's a really difficult gun battle where people seem to be coming out of the woodwork in order to try and stop you from making it to the end of the dock, but it's very rewarding, and if you do lose too much health, there's literally a restaurant right off to the side you can refill your health at, and that's something I find really funny. Hey guys, he shot me too many times, I'm gonna go pop into this pizza place here that for some reason hasn't noticed all the gunfire and get a few slices. And it's all capped off with an exciting boat chase with Ryder where you have to pump his boat full of lead and take him out. This is a mission that really understands how to build to a climax. You start off fighting from afar, go in guns blazing, and finally you have a high-octane boat chase with someone you thought was your friend. It's exciting all the way through, and manages to get more exciting all the way up to the final boom. Although it's funny, with an uncapped frame rate, you swim much slower, so it's actually possible, in fact very easy, to reach Ryder's boat before he reaches it, and if you reach his boat, he will calmly and methodically walk into the sea. Now that's funny.
Time for smoke.
Alright, let's roll.
The Johnson brothers finna take that fat fool down.
And now we've come to the end of the line. Now this is definitely a really damn good mission, but I wouldn't say it's the best in the game. It's definitely the most extensive though. You found Big Smoke and now you have to break into his stronghold and take him out. You have to break down the wall with a vehicle that only shows up in this mission, the SWAT tank, fight through 3 separate floors before reaching Big Smoke, have a boss fight with him, then fight your way back to the ground level on a timer on account of the building being on fire and about to explode. Then from there, you have to chase down Officer Tenpenny, who's driving all over the city in a fire truck with Sweet on the back. Then once you save Sweet, you defend the car in the gunner's seat until Tenpenny eventually accidentally drives off a bridge and does himself in. This is, to my knowledge, the only mission in the original release to have a checkpoint in the middle, and that's because it is a monster of a mission that few people could do in one go, at least on the first try. But it's got a little bit of everything. Unique vehicles, escalating action, an exciting escape sequence, an exciting chase sequence being a tail gunner, and it even has a boss fight. Admittedly, Big Smoke crumbles like paper mache in the rain if you walk into the fight with a minigun, but that's besides the point. It is a buffet of pretty well every single mechanic in the game, and it's pretty damn good. It's exciting, it understands escalation, it's tough but fair, and it's easily the most varied mission in the game. It definitely feels like a proper payoff to the overall story, but there are just a few missions that do it better in my opinion, and for your consideration, teleporting Sweet.
The Da Nang boys are arriving today on a container ship. Little Lion's gone to check it out. I really gotta go too.
The Da Nang thing is seriously one of the best missions in the game. The Mountain Cloud boys are finally going to take out the Vietnamese gang, the Da Nang boys, who've been giving them trouble. You roll up in a helicopter, you shoot some fools, but everything goes wrong when the helicopter gets shot down, so Carl is now alone with nothing but his knife. So from there, you have to climb onto the boat and using stealth, gradually build up your arsenal with nothing but the guns you can salvage off the people you kill, and make your way through the boat, killing everyone in sight, rescuing a couple of refugees, and finally face the leader of the Da Nang boys, the Snakehead. The way this mission just takes everything away from you, forcing you to use nothing but your wits to survive, is really clever and fun. It feels like a genuine accomplishment, and there's this constant fear of running out of ammo and resources because you're relying on scraps to get through, making this a rather organically exciting mission, and it's all capped off with what is essentially a boss fight. But the snakehead goes down like nothing. In fact, there's nothing stopping you from just pulling out a gun and shooting him, but once it's all said and done, this feels so much larger scale than many other missions. The stakes are high, and it feels like a proper payoff for this sequence of missions. This multi-level boat and all the henchmen make for one of the best missions in the game, bar none.
Do you have any idea what you're doing for Torino?
Nah, I seem to be on the need-to-know basis.
Oh, no, man.
Black Project for me is one of those missions that I could easily understand being someone's personal favorite, but for me it doesn't quite place that high. But it absolutely makes a case for itself. The idea is you have to break into Area 69, hurdy-dur, doesn't this game love the number 69? And you can either stealth your way into the underground facility, or you can take the direct approach and go guns blazing, but either way you're going to be fighting a lot of military personnel. You're even given a unique item, the thermal goggles, which makes the visuals into a headache, don't bother. And once you're underground, you have to fight through a ton of enemies in this unique facility in order to retrieve the Black Project, aka a $60 million jetpack. And trust me when I say, as a kid, getting that jetpack for the first time was simply the coolest thing because jetpacks are all too rare in video games, especially back then. It's non-stop action against tough enemies with multiple ways to approach, and best of all, they created an entire facility for this one mission. Like, without exploits or mods, there's no way to access this, and it's a really intricate and interesting facility. So for the unique level design, having multiple ways to approach the action, having fun action, and the awesome payoff, the Black Project mission is easily one of the best missions in the game. But there is one better.
Torino?
Listen, you gotta pull one last string.
Hold up,
for me,
mate. Look,
okay?
hold up 1 second.
Communists at the gate, Carl.
I'm tired of this, Torino.
Yeah, something told me that Vertical Bird was gonna be number one on the list. Truth be told, I think GTA San Andreas' story and mission structure is a bit odd. It has this really great build-up in the first act as a life on the streets gang sim, but then the entire middle chunk of the game until you return to Los Santos feels like a more traditional GTA game where you gradually build up your resources and power, but then you go back to Los Santos and it goes back to being a life on the streets gang sim, and in that regard, Vertical Bird feels like the final mission in the chunk of San Andreas that's supposed to be an over-the-top power fantasy. And it's the mission that I always think of whenever I talk about this game to people. It's the one last favor for Torino. You have to break into a military base in San Fierro, kill every bit of opposition, steal a fighter jet, fight some other fighter jets in an exciting dogfight, then completely wreck a couple of spy boats. Of course, with cheats, the epic moment of getting the fighter jet for the first time was a bit ruined, but just imagine if you're a kid who doesn't have any cheats and finally gets to this mission and you get a fighter jet out of nowhere. Dude, that is the coolest thing. This entire mission feels like it's straight out of a Mission Impossible movie. Mechanically, it's not too dissimilar to a lot of missions in the game. Its major notable aspect is being another one of the small handful of missions where you can choose stealth or a direct fight, but nothing in this game feels more epic to me. It's completely stupid and over the top. Few things could ever achieve this level of coolness, bar none. There's nothing bad or tedious about this mission, it's all action all the time. It introduces new mechanics and vehicles as late as only a few missions from the end of the game. It's one of the most varied missions in the game, it's one of only a few missions that utilize flying in an interesting way, and the only mission where dogfighting is a main central moment, making it the most fun use of novelty in the game in my eyes. It succeeds on every level. It's the final farewell to ridiculous San Andreas before you get back to serious San Andreas, and I love it for that. That is why Vertical Bird is my pick for the best mission in all of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Man, that was certainly a trip. I think going through this list, a couple of things become clear. First of all, it's funny to notice that most of the worst missions are at the front of the game or the back of the game, whereas the middle is where all the best content is. I feel like that's because the ending of the game felt somewhat rushed, and of course, the beginning of the game is when you're introducing mechanics, and so it starts out pretty slow. But also, the worst missions are the ones where they're slow without much action, whereas the best missions seem to be the ones that have a little bit of everything. Stealth, driving, shooting, etc. Something that makes the most out of all the mechanics at once, but also another thing that becomes clear is that on an individual level, not a lot of these missions are mind-blowing, but I think what it comes down to is that Grand Theft Auto as a series has always been something that's better than the sum of its parts. You're not necessarily looking at individual aspects of gameplay and seeing how great they are individually, you're looking at the grand picture and how it all comes together. And I think that's why the best missions are the ones that have a little bit of everything, because these games are at their best when they are the sum of their parts, and not the sum of just a couple of their parts, if you see what I mean. Regardless, I do quite love this game, and I look forward to playing it again in the future, and just so we're clear, I'm probably gonna do this for other GTA games as well, so stay tuned for that eventually. That's it for me. If you like what I do here and want to support the channel, you can like this video, leave a comment telling me what you think, subscribe, and hit the notification icon so you're always up to date on what I'm doing. And if you want to support the channel financially, you can pledge to my Patreon for unique perks and rewards such as early access, Discord benefits, and exclusive content, along with these fine folks right here. And an extra special thank you to Brooklyn, Bettch, Gaw004, Twisted Wishes, Cotton Swab, Kristopher Fulton, Leyabout, MyNameIsTank, FarmCat84, Raph, TyTrovy, WeirdWebbster, and William Miller for going above and beyond. Elsewise than that, I've been the King of Snark Style right here on Tactical Bacon Productions, and I will see you next time. Stay crispy, my friends.